I have a scar on the left side of my face, which my sister cut with her own hand while I was asleep, but I haven't been able to debunk her, because I'm waiting for an opportunity to push her into hell with my own hands. The opportunity just came so suddenly. It was raining a little that day, and it was my cousin, who had just bought a new car, who drove by to pick us up from school. Her sister, Audalette Hurst, sat in the car in the envy of everyone, and I don't dare to sit in it. After all, my cousin John Hurst had never been a treat since I was a child, and ever since I had been disfigured and made an ugly bastard by everyone, he hated me even more and more, and felt that I had disgraced him. I turned around and was about to leave, when my kind-hearted cousin suddenly spoke. "Why are you stunned? Get in the car." I hesitated, but I still didn't dare to get in the car. But my cousin had already opened the door, and I had just lifted my foot to enter, when Audalette Hurst suddenly remembered something and said to me, "Don't come in." I suddenly remembered, my homework book is in the classroom. You go and help me get it home. If I can't hand in my homework tomorrow, I'll tell my mother and let her beat you to death. The cousin coughed lightly. So, half of my foot in the car was put back in immediately. I saw the smug in Audalette Hurst's eyes. I've long been accustomed to her eyes, and I didn't pay attention to it at all. I turned around and walked towards the school, counting the time, and I deliberately walked around to the door of the third-year classroom, pinching the bell for the end of class. The time for people to walk out of the classroom to the corridor is not more than a minute and not a second. When I walked to the door of the third and fourth classes of high school, I met the girl Selena Pritt, who had just gotten up from the last row of the classroom and left with her classmates. I knew this beautiful girl. She was one level above me, and she was my cousin's girlfriend, who was in love. My cousin's girlfriend, Selena Pritt, also knew me. She was not like everyone else. Because of the scar on the left side of my face, she avoided me, and every time we met, she would ask me about my studies. Therefore, I think in my heart that she is a girl to be trusted and relied on. I hurried over and happened to bump into her. She gently held me steady and asked with a smile, "Go in such a hurry. Have you seen your cousin?" I told you the truth, Sister Selena Pritt. My cousin's car was out there. He probably thought you were going to study at night, and you can ask him to come back and pick you up now. Selena Pritt smiled and touched my head, smiled well in her eyes, and said, "Okay, thank you for telling me. I'll tell him to come back and pick me up." I watched as Sister Selena Pritt, calling John Hurst to pick her up, and quickly went downstairs. In the sight that no one could see, the corners of my mouth slowly rose with a smile. I deliberately ignored the fact that my sister, Audalette Hurst, was sitting in my cousin's car. Then I counted the minutes and seconds, and at this time, my cousin's car should have just driven to the bridge. The section bridge is one of the most important bridges linking the streets of our town and the road leading to our schools. Everyone who comes out of our town has to cross such a bridge. There are two sections of the bridge, cars and bicycles, and because the bridge is dark and unoccupied, there are often road robberies and pedestrian crimes. It is said that there are also homeless people, who wait for single women to pass by on this dark bridge, to carry out coercion and robbery. Of course, these are just rumors. I had been taking the bus to the bridge back home, and I had never believed it, until yesterday. Yesterday was my day at school. Audalette Hurst was supposed to be on duty with me, but she packed her bag and said she wanted to go shopping with her classmates, so she left first. And when I was cleaning until 6 o'clock, I walked out of the school gate and saw my cousin John Hurst at a glance. Since my cousin fell in love with Selena Pritt, he has become much less angry, and when he met me, he was no longer as disgusted as usual. When he saw me come out, he took the initiative to come up to me and asked me, "Is Selena Pritt out?" I honestly told you, Selena Pritt, I'm going to study at night. It may be 8 o'clock. I said that and walked forward. Suddenly, John Hurst pulled the car over, lowered the window and said, "Get in the car." Brother will give you a ride. I'm still very happy, and I think that my cousin has finally been kind to me. But soon, just as we were about to go up the bridge, my cousin received a call from a friend. The friend was on the phone and asked him to meet in the city, and that location was the opposite of the location of my home. I've known how to read words and emotions since I was a child, and I know that my cousin has something else going on, but I hope he can send me across the bridge. Cousin, can you send me under the bridge? I shuddered and said, I heard that there are homeless people robbing on the bridge or something. The cousin burst out laughing, still insisting on parking the car under the bridge. Are you rich, ugly bastard? Robbing others also picks one that is fine. Hurry up and go home. My brother is busy. Don't listen to other people's nonsense all day long. Then he couldn't help but say something, and kicked me out of the car. I took a deep breath and walked up the bridge alone. At that time, it was already 6:30 in the evening. It was getting dark quickly. The facilities of the bridge were not good. There were no street lights in the whole process, and I could only walk forward in the dark. I walked faster and faster, begging the bad guys not to target me, but in the end, I heard what I didn't want to hear. God still took good care of me, although I was not targeted. But on this half of the bridge, I saw with my own eyes that a homeless man pulled a girl with a big school bag, and estimated to be only in elementary school, into the bridge hole. The first thing I could think of was just running away. I don't have a cell phone. I can't call the police right away. I don't have a weapon on my body, and I know that at this moment, I have no other way but to escape. But as I rushed a short way forward, I heard the little girl's desperate cry. I knew that if I didn't help her, she might be pulled into a hole and bullied by the bad guys. Just like the rumors, I was still young at this time, and I didn't know how the bad guys would bully that little girl. But I thought it might be. My cousin and my friend said the same, and they were played with by others. Maybe there will be bloodshed, there will be death. Thinking of this, I yelled at the bridge, the police are coming, the police are coming, the police are coming. I shouted 3 times in a row, wondering if the bad guy had let the little girl go because of this. Then, I ran down the bridge at a speed of 100 meters. I knew that there was a public telephone booth under the bridge, and I put the only coin I had left in it, and called the police on 110, and I was very anxious. Please send someone over quickly. There's a bad guy who has taken a girl away. Next, I found a brightly lit convenience store. I stood at the door, expecting the police to get the little girl out. However, I couldn't wait for the police to come. So I waited until the little girl panicked, ran down the bridge by herself, and then ran away. It is estimated that after the homeless man heard me shouting that the police were coming, he didn't dare to cause trouble, so he also let the little girl go. I waited another half hour, but I still couldn't wait for any police cars to arrive. At that time, I knew that it was not once or twice that something happened to this section of the bridge. And it was estimated that there were many people who called the police, and the police did not gain anything every time they came, so they no longer paid so much attention. I don't know if the police came later, but a plan slowly took shape in my mind. I just didn't expect the opportunity to come so quickly. The plan went so smoothly again. Adelette Hurst caught a ride with her cousin, and a short time after I left, I met Selena Pritt, who had just finished class. Selena Pritt's relationship with her cousin was at its best, and I knew that a phone call from Selena Pritt would make her cousin turn course in no time. The cousin loves Selena Pritt so much that he will never carry another girl in front of the girl he loves, even if that person is his own cousin. The only thing John Hurst could do, then, was to put Adelette Hurst under the bridge halfway through the way, as he did yesterday. Of course, there is still a loophole in this plan. That is, I don't know if the time will be just so coincidental, whether my cousin's car happened to drive under the bridge. Although I counted the time, my cousin's car could only drive just to the vicinity of Duanqiao. But if the car happens to be fast or slow, all plans are just plans. Everything can only be determined by Providence, I thought quietly. That night, I deliberately postponed my return home. It was 6:30 to help Adelette Hurst get her homework book, but I didn't leave school until 7 o'clock in the evening. I went to the bus stop with the school's evening self-study team. I waited for half an hour before the bus driver, who was going to dinner, drove slowly. When the bus passed by the bridge, I looked out the window, and it was a dark night, like a flood beast, which would swallow people into their stomachs. But I know I'm in the car and I'm safe now. I clenched my fists and clutched at the armchair seat. Even through the glass panel, I could hear Adelette Hurst's screams and cries for help, but I knew no one would save her. No one will save her. I laughed out loud under such fantasies. When I got home, I was greeted by a slap in the face from my stepmother, Anne Bowman. A hard slap in the face, slamming me down on the left cheek. The scar on my left cheek, which was scratched by the Adelette Hurst knife, and did not go to the hospital in time to be stitched up, felt that my long-healed scar began to ache again. I clenched my fists hard, covered the painful left side of my face, and stood aside. And Bowman didn't let me go, but chased after me, slapping me in the face. I held back my tears, slowly learning from her insults why she was hitting me. Cheap bitch. Why did you come back so late? Why didn't you come back with your sister? You deliberately wanted to hurt Adelette Hurst, didn't you? Stinky bitch. Don't think you hurt my daughter? You will have a good life. I ask you, why did you let her go home alone? When I heard this, it became clear to me that my plan was no longer just a plan. At this point, the pain I felt in my face was no longer painful, because even though I don't know what inhuman treatment happened to Adelette Hurst, I know very well that my plan has worked. When I covered my face with my hands, I looked at her gently through the corners of my eyes through my fingers. I believe that at that time, Anne Bowman sensed something from my strange gaze, but she didn't have time to react because there was a sound of the door opening. It's my dad, Abner Hurst, who works outside the home. Back. When Abner Hurst came back and saw my stepmother beating me indiscriminately, he was furious. Of course, he didn't feel sorry for me being beaten, but because he was on the night shift today, and Anne Bowman called him to rush home immediately, on the grounds that something was wrong at home. The family's financial resources were all dependent on Abner Hurst's salary as a small foreman in an electronics factory, and Anne Bowman had called him back in this way enough to make him angry. As a result, as soon as he came back, the family was in a mess, and he naturally became even more angry. As Anne Bowman looked at me in a daze, Abner Hurst slapped her off of me and threw her aside. Anne Bowman immediately curled up in the corner. Abner Hurst was about to kick it when Anne Bowman burst into tears with red eyes. You still have a tantrum on your face. Your daughter, Adelette Hurst, gets bullied by the bad guys. Your daughter won't be able to marry in the future, so I'll see what you can do. Abner Hurst withdrew the kick he was about to kick, and then, he slowly raised his eyes to see Adelette Hurst coming out of the room, cloaked, not human, not ghostly. This is his proud daughter. Adelette Hurst has always been all his expectations, especially after my face was scratched and turned ugly. Abner Hurst pinned all his expectations on Adelette Hurst. She is fair-skinned and beautiful, and her appearance is very much like Anne Bowman in her youth. And she is even better. Anne Bowman seduced my dad, Abner Hurst, in an electronics factory because of her beauty. And after my mom jumped off a cliff from a depressive episode, they lived together as concubines. That's when I found out that my dad had a daughter with Anne Bowman. This daughter is the same age as me, Adelette Hurst. Adelette Hurst inherited Anne Bowman's vibrancy, and when she moved into the house, she slashed me deep into the left side of my face with a sharp knife while I was asleep. My father, Abner Hurst, was not at home that night. He was on duty at the factory, and Anne Bowman didn't take me to the hospital immediately when he learned that his daughter had done such a thing. Instead, I was forced to take painkillers, and I took 10,000 essential oils at random, and wiped them on the open wound, on the left side of my face. I was too young to know that this scar would change my life forever. When my father noticed something was wrong with the left side of my face, and Bowman made up the excuse that I had fallen, she also threatened me not to say that Adelette Hurst did it, or she would cut the right side of my face. I was only 10 years old at the time, and I didn't even know how to resist. I only know to be scared inside, and I know that if I don't listen, I will hurt more. The fear and cowardice at that time caused me to be now an ugly monster with an ugly scar on the left side of his face that everyone can dislike. I once quietly went to see an old Chinese medicine doctor in a town, and the old Chinese medicine doctor told me sadly, "Little girl, this scar can't be healed anymore. When you go to school in the future and go to the big city, you go to the doctor in the big city to see. Maybe they will have some good solution, but Grandpa can't help it." Because of this belief, I endured the ridicule of my classmates again and again, stood on the edge of the cliff again and again, and tried to find my mother, but I persevered. I know this is my last hope. I'm going to the big city. I'm going to meet the doctors there, and if I can, I'll do whatever it takes to heal the scars on my face. At that time, I was so young, I didn't know that the scars on the surface could be healed, but the scars on the heart were difficult to heal for a lifetime. I have stood up to such an ugly face until now. I didn't expect that a small plan would be able to make a mess of this family. That night, my father and stepmother took Adelette Hurst overnight to the city for a medical checkup. Before leaving the house, they told me that Adelette Hurst's bullying by homeless people on the bridge should never be publicized. Otherwise, it would break my legs, and I covered my face with a feigned fear and nodded frequently. At that time, I didn't have a mobile phone and computer, although I didn't know exactly how Adelette Hurst was bullied by bad guys. But I vaguely feel that this is a matter related to the girl's reputation. In our small town, which is still backward, the reputation of a girl will be related to whether she can marry a good family in the future. I saw Adelette Hurst with her hair disheveled, and when they took her out, the corners of her eyes deliberately turned towards her, revealing a glow of pity. Adelette Hurst was keenly aware of my taunt of her, and yelled at me hysterically, "Mom, it's this slut who hurt me. She was the one who asked my cousin to put me down halfway, and she was the one who hurt me." Before she could finish her sentence, she was interrupted by Abner Hurst, who glared at me fiercely. "Okay, don't you think things are messy enough? Your cousin doesn't want to see her. How can she put you down as soon as she calls you? And why did she get out of the car? Why did you let me get in the car alone?" There are some things that Adelette Hurst will never figure out until she dies. I innocently said, "Adelette Hurst, you asked me to get you the homework book. Have you forgotten it? Mom and Dad, you can go to your cousin and ask for clarification." Because of my remarks, Adelette Hurst had nothing to say anymore, and reluctantly followed her parents to the hospital overnight for a physical examination. I don't know what happened next. The plan was successful, enough to keep me safe in this house for a long time. After all, they are all too busy taking their bullied baby daughter to do all kinds of physical examinations. Because of this, I felt like my father, Abner Hurst, was a decade older. Not long after this happened, I saw him one day slashing the homeless man with a knife, but Bowman controlled him fiercely. "What are you impulsive? Adelette Hurst is already like this. If you go and cut that man, won't the whole village know that your daughter is being bullied? What can I do? Is my Abner Hurst daughter going to be insulted like this?" Abner Hurst sighed in dismay. When my face was cut ugly by his precious daughter, he didn't feel at ease. When his baby daughter was severely insulted by the homeless man, he was upset. I thought softly, what a loving father and daughter. And Bowman gave me a wary look and whispered, "Anyway, as long as we don't say a word about this kind of thing, nothing happens. Only we know When Bowman saw that Abner Hurst couldn't move, he said, "If you're really going to cut someone, then don't drag my daughter into the water, and then I'll tell the villagers that it's your daughter Nicole Hurst, who is being bullied." Audlette Hurst, I want to marry a good man. I heard that your factory director's son has just returned from other places. Is there such a thing? Let's talk about it and see if we can introduce them too. Abner Hurst gave up on the idea of hacking the homeless man to death. Although Abner Hurst abandoned his plan to hack the homeless man to death in order to save Audlette Hurst's reputation, but I don't want to see any girl in this kind of danger again. So, I took out the coins I had saved for many years, went to a public phone booth near the school, and called the police. I didn't give out my name, and I reported it anonymously every time. There is a homeless man on Duan Chiao, who drags single women all day long to carry out revenge, bullying and robbery. At first, the police were upset, but as I reported again and again, finally, they gave me a local police landline number and asked me to submit it directly if I had solid evidence. So I called one phone after another to the landline of this police station. Every time I answered the phone, it was a young voice, and the young policeman didn't think I was maliciously reporting like everyone else. Instead, I took a very serious note of my remarks, told the other party a few important information points, and provided the other party with an effective solution. Uncle Policeman, you can let one of your female colleagues disguise herself as a girl and walk on the bridge alone. You can lure this homeless man out, subdue him when the time comes, and force him to confess other crimes. When the police heard this, they were stunned for a moment. When he asked me for my real name, I pleaded with him, "I'm afraid of reprisals. Please don't tell me or I'll be in danger." The little brother of the policeman probably thought that I was afraid of causing trouble, so he smiled and agreed to me. After this police boy promised me, one afternoon after school, I took the bus home, and when I passed by Duanqiao, I saw several police cars lined up. In the crowd, a ragged homeless man was pulled out of the bridge hole by several policemen, and in addition to a few policemen in police uniforms, there were also several young people in civilian clothes, presumably plainclothes policemen. I know, it's a homeless man arrested. The young policeman who answered my phone did exactly what he said and arrested the homeless man, and he was greeted with a prison sentence. That night, the police came to my house, because it is said that after the homeless man was arrested, under the interrogation of the police, he honestly confessed to the 13 women who were bullied and insulted by him. One of the women he succeeded in was the daughter of the old Hurst family under the big tree in the village. On this night, not only was my father taken away to assist in the questioning, but even my stepmother, Anne Bowman, lost her former arrogance. Together with Audlette Hurst, she was summoned to the police station to confess the facts of the criminal. The news spread throughout the town. When Audlette Hurst returned to school, her classmates began to look at her with sympathy, and my stepmother, Anne Bowman, started spreading rumors. It's not my Audlette Hurst who was bullied. My Audlette Hurst was on the run. She and her sister Nicole Hurst, that day they went up the bridge together, and it was Nicole Hurst who was insulted, or how to say that people are ugly and not blessed. Soon, the sympathetic gaze of the classmates in the school shifted their position. I became the poor victim, and Audlette Hurst became the one who escaped. Although students at this age are only 16 or 17 years old, they gradually know how to distinguish between right and wrong. Public opinion has changed from, "She's so pitiful," at the beginning to, "Audlette Hurst is such a scumbag." Watching his own sister being insulted and not being saved, I would never have imagined that things would turn out like this. But because of this incident, the proud group of good sisters of Audlette Hurst in the school gradually moved away from her. After all, everyone doesn't want to wait for death to be saved by Audlette Hurst. Although I still can't make any friends in this school, I don't care in the first place. Audlette Hurst was no better, and her friends were completely away from her because she didn't save her sister. Since Audalette Hurst was isolated at school, she has no friends and has turned to outside the school for solace. All along, she has been in a hot fight with a vocational high school student from another school. One day, I heard her talking on the phone to a vocational high school student, asking her where to go climbing the mountain for the night. At first, Audalette Hurst said nothing because Anne Bowman would come back every night. Ever since Audalette Hurst was insulted by a homeless man, Anne Bowman has been staring at Audalette Hurst, a precious girl, very closely. Not only did she not be allowed to return late, but she was also not allowed to have a boyfriend. This boyfriend, Madge Pound, who is in a vocational high school, will definitely be forcibly broken up by Anne Bowman if Anne Bowman knows about it. When it came time to wash the dishes, it was just me and Audalette Hurst in the house. I looked out the window at the good weather and said, "It's so nice. I really want to go hiking." Audalette Hurst scoffed and scoffed. "You ugly bastard. Don't you think someone will take you to climb the mountain?" I said in my heart, "I'm an ugly monster. Isn't it thanks to you?" Said mildly and calmly. "Yes, that's why I envy you, Audalette Hurst. You're the one with you. Unlike me, you don't have any friends." Audalette Hurst, the empty-minded bale of straw, was praised by me for holding her head up. "Of course, you know, Madge Pound asked me to go hiking. We're going camping." "Really? I envy you so much. Can you take me with you?" I deliberately made a tactful request, and waited quietly for her to ruthlessly refuse me. "You're dreaming." Audalette Hurst turned around and went inside, packing up her clothes for the night in the mountains. "You ugly bastard. You go to the mountains and even scare the ghosts out of you. You hurry up and cool me down." Soon, Audalette Hurst was inspired by me to pack her bags for the night up the mountain. There was a sound of the motorcycle parking downstairs, and before leaving the house, she told me, "My mom came back and said I was sleeping in the room. Tell her not to disturb me to sleep." I obediently said, "Okay." Immediately stood on the windowsill and watched her and her high school boyfriend drive away together. I knew they were destined for something tonight, although I don't know. What happens to them is good for me. But I'm not in a hurry. I know that patience is the only way for me to escape this bottomless abyss once and for all. A few nights passed like this, and by the end of the year, Anne Bowman was on the night shift, and Abner Hurst was on the night shift. They usually work until the morning before going home. And Audalette Hurst and her boyfriend in vocational high school. There was a first time, there was a second time, and soon, they developed to the point that they came directly to sleep at home. I, on the other hand, were responsible for standing outside the door for them, because of my style. Madge Pound, a vocational high school man, also met me and was considered to have met. At first, when he saw the scar on the left side of my face, he was surprised by my ugliness and was shocked. But then he took it easy and smiled, and said to me, "Thank you." I turned my head to ignore him, and I knew why he was thanking me for keeping a good eye on their mess things. Every day I stood in the doorway, listening to Audalette Hurst's sometimes comforting and sometimes painful cries. Often I couldn't tell whether she was in pain or joy. Regardless, I knew that if it got out, it would definitely ruin Audalette Hurst. But at that time, I didn't have a mobile phone, so I couldn't take any evidence. I often wonder if my daily actions to give them wind are ineffective. After all, Audalette Hurst is happy every time Madge Pound leaves. I felt like maybe my plan was wrong, and started to blame myself a little bit. After all, I sacrificed a lot of time to memorize English words in order to create space for them, and my future is all pinned on the college entrance examination. Until the winter break came, I knew that all my previous sacrifices were worth it. And Bowman took out a beautiful red dress in front of me at the dinner table and said, "The factory director promised to let you go on a blind date with his son. My mother told you, you have to behave well. You must not make any mistakes. You will never be able to get into a good university with this grade. If you can marry into the factory director's family, and successfully give them a son and a half-daughter, you will have no worries for the rest of your life. Mom can enjoy the happiness too." As soon as Anne Bowman finished speaking, Adelette Hurst covered her mouth and rushed into the toilet and vomited wildly. I thought Adelette Hurst was stimulated. After all, she loved Madge Pound. At that time, in my somewhat closed head, I always thought, if she didn't like Madge Pound, why would she be bullied and yelled at Anne Bowman every night while he was away, and then send him downstairs with a happy face and reluctance? Isn't this the love that classmates are talking about? But when I went to the toilet out of curiosity, I saw Anne Bowman's old face change rapidly, and then raised a slap and slapped Adelette Hurst in the face. Bang, bang, 2 times in a row. It was the first time I could remember seeing Anne Bowman spank her baby daughter. When she was bullied by bad guys half a year ago, Anne Bowman didn't want to beat her, but at this moment, she beat her indiscriminately, and even I was confused. My father, Abner Hurst, saw that Anne Bowman was beating his daughter, and he was so angry that he stepped forward to stop him, and he saw Anne Bowman's voice hoarse, and he didn't know what to say in my father's ear. Immediately, even my father was furious, and slapped Adelette Hurst in the face. Just then, Anne Bowman noticed my presence, glared at me, and scolded me. "Slut, go back to your room. You won't come out without me telling you out." I knew that if I dared to resist, I would be the next to be beaten, so I went back to my room, and it wasn't until the next morning that I quietly washed up and took the bus to school in the city. To my surprise, Adelette Hurst continued to come to school as usual after being beaten up last night. Final exams are coming up soon, and I'm getting into revision. I told myself that there was still 1 semester, and as long as I survived this semester, when I was admitted to university, I would be able to escape from this bottomless abyss. Even though I didn't know what I needed to do to get out of this desperate situation. While I was actively reviewing, I secretly observed Adelette Hurst's movements. As usual, she combed her hair, put on makeup, and sent messages in class. The only thing that was different was that she refused to meet Madge Pound after being slapped twice by Anne Bowman that night. I don't know why she refused to see Madge Pound again, but many times when I saw Madge Pound waiting for her at the school gate, she just pretended not to see her and walked away. Madge Pound can't wait for her, so he'll block me. Once, he asked me very sincerely, why did Adelette Hurst ignore me? All I could say was, I don't know. He probably saw my problem, and he didn't embarrass me, and walked away. But I know that he will not give up, and just now I saw a flash of ruthlessness in his eyes. I subconsciously felt that if I wanted to completely push Adelette Hurst to the jetty, the best help might be Madge Pound. I quietly look forward to this day. On this day, while I was cleaning at home, I saw a test sheet from the hospital. The name of the test slip was my stepmother, Anne Bowman, and the test showed that she was 2 months pregnant. However, it was clear to me that Anne Bowman had already had a ligation and could not have conceived at all. Think back to last Sunday, when Adelette Hurst was picked up from her sheet by Anne Bowman, early in the morning and headed to town. I suspect that the owner of this test sheet should be someone else. This person should be Adelette Hurst, who has been messing with Madge Pound for countless days and nights. Adelette Hurst's morning sickness is getting worse and worse, and sometimes when the family eats, she will suddenly rush into the toilet and cover her mouth and spit out sour water. At this time, I learned to go to an internet cafe to surf the internet because of looking for college entrance examination materials, and I also searched for some clues and found a major feature of pregnancy, which is morning sickness. There are all kinds of signs that on the eve of this college entrance examination, Adelette Hurst is pregnant, and the child is Madge Pound. However, just as the truth was getting closer and closer, and I was thinking every day about how to uncover the true face of her unmarried pregnancy, Anne Bowman's operation shocked me fiercely. On the eve of the spring festival, She still arranged for Audlett Hurst to meet with the factory director's son according to the previous plan. I suddenly understood why Audlett Hurst refused to meet Madge Pound. It turns out that the posterior move is here. And Bowman is so ambitious that she wants the factory director's son to be the pickup man. Audlett Hurst, who is both beautiful and good-looking, quickly attracted the attention of Li Feng, the son of the factory director. In just one winter vacation, the two have been fighting hotly, and it is said that they have even gone to the hotel 2 or 3 times. I was still reviewing this at home, when I overheard Bowman boasting about it, and talking to my father, Abner Hurst. Li Feng is cute about our family Audlett Hurst. I taught Audlett Hurst to deliberately find a menstrual day and have sex with him. Young is young after all. Li Feng did not suspect our family Audlett Hurst. Our daughter married into the Li family as a rich wife. Looks like it's just around the corner. When my father heard this, he laughed very heartily, and told me to go out and buy him good wine and dinner that night, despite the wind and snow. This Chinese New Year, the Hurst family is shrouded in peaceful joy, and Bowman is especially so, blushing all day long. And everyone says that his daughter is about to marry into a wealthy family. Audlett Hurst was also in a very good mood, and after she got rid of Madge Pound, she seamlessly connected with the factory director's stupid son, not only sleeping with people, but also convincing the factory director's stupid son of her innocence. Every day and every night, I quietly studied for the college entrance examination at home. I didn't know what the future would be, but I knew I had to go to university. After the spring festival, Audlett Hurst didn't go to school directly. Her grades were not good, and she didn't expect to be admitted to a good school. Moreover, the Li family has already come to the door to propose. It is said that in just 1 month of the spring festival, the factory director's son has successfully enlarged the belly of Audlett Hurst. My stepmother, Anne Bowman, shared the news with the factory director as soon as possible. The factory director and the factory director's wife, who have always wanted to hug their grandson, are happy to see it, and it is rare that their son has found a favorite one he likes, and he is so smoothly pregnant. The old factory director, who has been adhering to the principle of having many sons and blessings, brought his son to the door the next day. The dowry alone is 666,000. This dowry in our small village and town can be said to be the top of the sky, and I don't know how many people envy it. I thought that Audlett Hurst was going to have a good life from now on, so I had to study harder and harder, hoping to do well in the exams. But I didn't expect that Audlett Hurst hadn't officially married into the Li family and lived a good life. So she set me up first. According to Audlett Hurst's plan, the Li family's dowry, she will use it to build a house for her hometown. But Audlett Hurst has a request. She didn't want me, an ugly bastard, to enjoy the dividends of her marriage. So she offered to ask my father to promise that if he wanted to use the money to build a house, he would break away from my father-daughter relationship. In other words, the family wanted me to move out of the household registration for fear that I would rob them of their dowry. This home allows me to live for free until after the college entrance examination. And when I take the college entrance examination, they want me to move out, and I can't continue to live in their new house in the future. My dad didn't agree at first, not because he loved me as a daughter, but because he thought it was always good to have more than one offspring when people were old. But Anne Bowman kept reminding him in his ear, "Don't forget that she is an ugly bastard, who will marry her in the future. You don't take the opportunity to break off her relationship now, and you will stay in our new house for the rest of your life. You have to keep this ugly bastard for the rest of your life." At the instigation of Anne Bowman, my father went with me to the police station, where I was domiciled to go through the formalities of disabling my parents. After the consultation, I was told that the law could not clearly sever the father-daughter relationship. The police station suggested that my father and I go to the law firm and enter into an agreement on the obligation of support, stating that I have no right to inherit his estate, and I have no obligation to support him, and that both parties agree that there is no need for the other party to visit. This is the best way to break off the father-daughter relationship. My father thought it was a good idea, and immediately hired a lawyer to sign the agreement. Abner Hearst and I broke away from the father-daughter relationship on the spot. From then on, I had no relationship with my father. I could not inherit his property, and I no longer had to support him in the future. But before that, he was obliged to raise me until I was 18 years old. When it was done, and Bowman was beaming with pride, and I was not shocked, sad. According to my agreement with my father, I can stay in this house for the time being, and I will leave after the college entrance examination. But Bowman, in order to drive me away completely, stopped preparing my dinner. In the cold winter, she didn't give me a quilt, and I wanted to apply for a dormitory at the school. But the school was close to the college entrance examination, and no longer opened dormitory applications. Desperate, with the only coins left in my body, I went to the public phone booth in front of the school again, and I tried to call the police station landline number. The one who answered the phone was still the young policeman of the day. When the police boy found out what happened to me, he asked me to go to the police station. When I arrived, he was the one who received me. He said to me apologetically, "I live in a dormitory, and I am all men, so I can't take you in. But I have a female colleague, who has just been transferred out. If you provide a certificate of household registration, a certificate from the school, I will try to tell her that you will live until after the college entrance examination." I listened to the young policeman's story, tears streaming down my face. The kindness of this stranger was even greater than that of my own father, and I never dared to face him with the scarred left side of my face, because I'm afraid that my ugliness will scare this good-hearted policeman. If there is a future, if I really have a future, I will repay this kind young policeman well. Seeing that I kept facing him sideways, the young policeman asked my name with a smile, and took the initiative to introduce himself. "I'm Stacy Max. Are you the girl who reported it anonymously that day? I recognize your voice. Rest assured that I will keep it secret. Thank you for your bravery that day. You avoided many injuries. I hope you will continue to be brave in the future. Take the university entrance examination well, and the sky will be very broad in the future." He had a righteous face, and even when he looked at my ugly left cheek, he had a gentle face, and I saw in his eyes a respect and understanding that I had never seen in the eyes of others. Just when the nutrition was needed, Stacy Max lent me $1,000 and said, "It's not for nothing. You will get ahead in the future. Remember to send it to Stacy Max with interest. But it's okay if you don't remember. Anyway, don't worry about it. I originally used this money to support children in the mountains." That's when I learned that Officer Stacy Max had also come out of the mountains and had been sponsored by others. And now he has been sponsoring disadvantaged children. On the eve of the college entrance examination, I went back to my home under the big tree and met Adelette Hearst, whose belly was bulging day by day. Adelette Hearst, even though she was pregnant, was still radiant, and when she saw me as an ugly bastard, she hurriedly sighed. Bad luck. I clenched my fists and said in my heart, I am only thanks to you today. I'd like to see how long Adelette Hearst's good fortune lasts. But it was the eve of the college entrance examination, and I couldn't let myself go wrong. So I swallowed my anger, packed some clothes, and planned to leave the house. When I walked to the door, I happened to meet my father. My father didn't ask me where I lived now, but when he saw me moving things, he was very unhappy and said, "Don't take things away from the house." All I could say was, "It's all my own clothes." Before I left the house, my father stopped me. "Your sister is going to have a banquet at the Gafu Hotel on May Day, and your in-laws know about your existence, so you must be there then." I originally wanted to refuse, but my father didn't give me a chance to refuse. Dress decently. Wear a school uniform if you don't have clothes, and tell people that you are still in school. By the way, remember to wear a mask. Don't scare your in-laws. At this time, and Bowman also came out and added, it's better to wear a few more masks. Don't scare your in-laws stupidly. If your in-laws didn't know about your existence, you wouldn't need to be ugly. Adelette Hurst touched her bulging belly and said, it's so unlucky. Why should you let her go with you? Seeing her ugly face, can I still get married? What nonsense. And Bowman was anxious when she heard this. She was very particular about getting married, and she was so angry that she didn't even bother to scold me, and instead went to educate her daughter. Don't talk nonsense. You're going to be a mother. At this time, Adelette Hurst would never have thought that she would be a fool. As I left the house with my luggage, and took the bus back to the temporary dormitory of Officer Stacy Mack's female colleague, I happened to meet Adelette Hurst's ex, Madge Pound, who was riding the bus with me. I believe this is not a coincidence. Madge Pound probably received some rumors, and he was suffering from not seeing Adelette Hurst, so he came here to block me. I know that Madge Pound is a hegemon despite his misdemeanor, but he's not a heinous bastard. On the contrary, every time he spoke to me in the past, he was extremely polite. As soon as Madge Pound sat down, he asked me, I heard that Adelette Hurst is getting married. I nodded and honestly said, yes. Madge Pound saw that I was nervous and comforted me. Don't worry, I'm not here to trouble you. I just can't figure out something. I know what Madge Pound can't figure out. The same people who have been abandoned and disliked. And no one knows better than me what it's like to be disliked all my life. I admit that at this time, I have some sympathy for Madge Pound, but also some selfishness, and perhaps long-suppressed resentment. I watched Madge Pound slowly speak. Adelette Hurst's baby in her belly. It should be yours. I saw Madge Pound's face, and when I heard this, it changed suddenly. May Day is the day of Adelette Hurst's wedding. In order to make up for the number of people my in-laws wanted, the ugly monster, who did not appear on the stage, was also invited to join the list. At this time, there was only a little more than a month left before the college entrance examination, and Bowman told me to go home early in the morning to help her work. From morning to night, until 11 o'clock at noon, the wedding banquet officially began. When I sat down in my chair, I was hungry. When the master of ceremonies began to speak on the stage, I was already spineless, swallowing at the table full of food, but I held back. At this time, I didn't know that there was a big drama dedicated to the child in Adelette Hurst's womb, which was slowly unveiling. But at this time, the guests were all immersed in the joy and blessing of the newlyweds, and no one thought of the bad side. Just when the wedding host made a speech, invited the bride and groom to make a grand appearance, and also invited the four parents to the stage together, the VCR on the stage suddenly played an ambiguous video. All the guests present were stunned by this scene. The most shocking thing is that this video is not even coded, and everything that should be exposed throughout the whole process has been revealed. I saw some parents who immediately covered the eyes of the children next to them, and they looked at them with relish. The VCR was filmed in Adelette Hurst's room at home. Adelette Hurst was exhausted by the strong man, lying on her back on the bed looking at the beautiful scene of the ceiling, and the man next to her was talking to her about obscenity, and she heard it giggling like a hen's voice. Perhaps even Adelette Hurst was stunned by the battle, and it was Bowman who reacted first. She tried to rush to the broadcast room, but it was too late. Everything seemed to be premeditated, and the door of the broadcast room was already locked, and no one could enter. Adelette Hurst held her belly up and cried nervously. The video is fake. The stupid son of the factory director's family ignored her crying and was so angry that his head was on fire. At the end of the video, there is a video of a doctor, who seems to be giving an interview, pointing to a photo of Adelette Hurst and saying, I remember this girl. I came with her mother. I did a B ultrasound, and pregnancy tests for her before the spring festival. She seems to have just turned 18 years old. She was 2 months pregnant at that time, but she didn't show her belly. Someone pressed her up. "Doctor, can you take responsibility for what you said?" The doctor rolled his eyes angrily. "I've delivered tens of thousands of children. Why can't I be responsible? If I had half a lie, you would have asked this girl to slap me in the face, and it would not make sense." "Who are you?" The person who chased him and asked pointed the camera at himself. "I'm the father of the child in Audlett Hurst's womb, the stupid son of the factory director. Are you going to be my pickup man? Should I call you stupid or cuckold me?" The video came to an abrupt end. Madge Pound didn't show a face, and with just a VCR and a paid-off announcer for the wedding planner, he managed to mess up Audlett Hurst's wedding, and also messed up in Bowman's life's expectations. Seeing this, I laughed heartily. When everyone was excited to eat melons, when Hearst House and Audlett Hurst had lost face, I hurried up to stuff food into my mouth. These are all the best ingredients: abalone, lobster, big crab. I have to say, the factory director is really willing to pay for his daughter-in-law. Unfortunately, Audlett Hurst was left unfazed. Bad luck. At this time, another sentence that I deliberately said to Madge Pound on the bus that day rang in my ears. Her attending doctor is a doctor from the Central Hospital. You can go and ask her. And this name is the name of the attending doctor on the pregnancy test checklist I saw when I was cleaning at home that day. I didn't expect Madge Pound's methods to be so hard and ruthless, and with just a few clues I gave him, he could make a bloody storm. Perhaps to punish the bad guys, there should be worse and more ruthless people. I think I found the right person this time. The wedding scene was chaotic on this day. It is said that the stupid son of the factory director's family was angry and pushed Audlett Hurst, who was pregnant with Rocca, off the stage and scolded the slut bitch. Unfortunately, Audlett Hurst was so desperate that she didn't fall to her death on the spot, and after she was taken to the hospital, she was rushed to a cesarean section and gave birth to a baby boy. The stupid son of the factory director immediately took the baby's hair and did a DNA test. The test results came out, and sure enough, it showed that Audlett Hurst gave birth to a baby boy who had no parent-child relationship with him. Lee Foam was so angry that he immediately recovered the dowry of 666,000 yuan, and also demanded that the Hurst family compensate for mental damages. The old factory director did more than his own son. He was fired immediately. My father Abner Hurst, who was working as a small leader in the factory, and even N. Bowman, who was a small worker, were all fired together. And implement professional suppression, and do not allow other factories around to hire these two shameless people, otherwise it will be against his old Lee family. Overnight, the Hearst so-called great future was all lost to a VCR by Madge Pound. Not only that, but it also became a joke of the whole village, and even spread to the next village, and Bowman could no longer hold his head up and even go out of his house. And it is said that Audlett Hurst suffered from mental depression after giving birth to her child. Loud noise, dropping, and throwing things at home all day long. The family dog is restless. Since then, I have devoted myself to preparing for the college entrance examination. My father, Abner Hurst, lost his job, and where else did he have the heart to live or die? It wasn't until I finished the college entrance examination that I got the admission letter from Beikang University, and became the city's top science student in one fell swoop, that reporters and media chased me to Hearst House to interview me for a paid interview. My father, Abner Hurst, came to me in a hurry and found me in the textile mill, where I worked. I think it's kind of ridiculous. When I saw this gray-haired old man standing in front of me, my heart did not waver. My father still had a face, and put on a serious stand in front of me. You, go home. There is a reporter who wants to interview you, and I have already taken the deposit. I said, I'm sorry, I'm going to work. I won't be able to go back tomorrow." Abner Hurst slapped the table in anger, and I slowly took it out, and I was legally signed to sever the father-daughter relationship by leaving the house. "This is the legal document you asked me to sign last time. If I am not mistaken, I don't have any father-daughter relationship with you now, and I don't have the responsibility to support you in the future. If you don't return the money recovered, I will remind the reporter to report you." I spoke slowly. Abner Hurst was so angry that he was speechless, stood up, raised his hand and was about to hit me. Just then, Officer Stacy Max, who happened to be in the neighborhood to handle the case and stopped by to see me, walked in. He squeezed Abner Hurst's hand hard, and Stacy Max, who had long known what I was doing to my biological father, reminded me in a gentle tone after stopping my father's atrocities, "Abner Hurst, Nicole Hurst really doesn't have anything to do with you legally. Please don't harass her, or you'll have to go to court." Abner Hurst originally wanted to do something to me, but seeing that Stacy Max was wearing a police uniform, he naturally didn't dare to make a mistake and left in a huff. I'm so grateful to Stacy Max for keeping me careful. Back that day, Abner Hurst is said to have attacked Ann Bowman, resenting her for framing her and breaking away from her own daughter. In the chaos, I don't know who strangled the little grandson, who was less than 2 months old, directly in the cradle, but there was no proof of this, and in the end, Abner Hurst claimed that Audalette Hurst was mentally abnormal and strangled his child to death. Madge Pound is also not a good stubble. Since the birth of the child, he has really wanted to see the child, but Ann Bowman has always looked down on him, and he will not let him see the child. Well, the child was killed directly, and he took the Hurst family directly to court with a lawsuit. The last person to take responsibility is said to be Audalette Hurst, who is already in a poor mental state. Audalette Hurst was sent straight to a psychiatric hospital, and I don't know what happened next, but I know that Abner Hurst won't just let me go. So not long after this incident, I went directly to the school's academic affairs office and asked the school leaders not to disclose my university admission information. The school leaders learned about my situation and the current family situation of the Hurst family, and promised to help me hide the information and never announce my admission school and major. I breathed a sigh of relief. When I left the school and was about to start the next journey in my life, a young man in a suit approached me. The other party claimed to be an employee of a large listed electrical appliance company in Bikang, and issued various documents to prove the information. He said straight to the point, "I came here to fund the college student program, and our leader knows your situation and wants to spend money on plastic surgery for you, but there is one condition. You must come to work in her company for 10 years after graduating from college." The staff member spoke very sincerely, and I tried desperately to find his loopholes, but I couldn't find them. In the end, I learned that the other party's boss turned out to be Cornelia Liu, a businesswoman who often does good deeds on TV. In the business world, Cornelia Liu is the most powerful and trusted signboard. I didn't hesitate too much and resolutely accepted his arrangement. I know that people don't live in this world for a face, but with an ugly face. Walking in this world has many inconveniences. I have sworn countless times that one day, I will do whatever it takes to heal the scars on my face. Now that there is such an opportunity, even if there is an abyss under the opportunity, I am not afraid. As it turned out, my impromptu decision was not arbitrary. I was quickly treated with my first laser surgery for facial scar removal, under the arrangement of Cornelia Liu's assistant. After looking at my case, the doctor decided that the scar, which was made by a knife, could be removed mostly with the help of technology. Even if you can't get rid of 100%, at least 80% of the way back to your appearance is perfectly fine. I thought that if I could get rid of 50% of the scars, I would be happy, and I could cover up the rest with makeup. But I didn't expect that the current technology is so good, and the doctor said that my scar is not a congenital pigment scar, but it is actually less tricky. Within a year, I had 8 laser scar removal surgeries in a row, and each time it was treated conservatively, with no sequel, and the doctor thought that I was young, and safety came first. Because of the doctor's lack of aggressiveness, the scar on my face recovered exceptionally well, and there were hardly any symptoms of discomfort. In just 1 year, as I walked through the crowds of the university, I already looked like a normal person, like everyone else. Like a normal person. This is just a thing within reach of an ordinary person. But for me, I have been struggling for more than 10 years. Since I was scratched on my face at the age of 10, my greatest wish is to walk like a normal person. Eventually, I did it, and with the help of well-meaning entrepreneur Cornelia Liu, I became an ordinary person. Now, when my classmates talk to me, as long as they don't stare at my left cheek, they don't even see that the left side of my face used to hide a deep, ugly scar. There were even male classmates who asked me to watch a movie and confessed to me I couldn't have imagined this before. I once thought that such days did not belong to me, but now, it has happened to me. From then on, my world was no longer just me and endless math problems. I also began to be like an ordinary person, studying, eating, making friends in college, and I even joined the student union and participated in clubs. When I graduated, I also performed on stage with my female classmates, and this year's popular Korean group dance. When I was dancing on stage, I saw a familiar face among the relatives who were invited by the students to attend the graduation ceremony. I suspect I'm dazzled, or maybe I'm thinking about it day by day, so I'm wrong. But when I looked back on, I saw the man, Officer Stacy Max. I also owe him over $1,000 to Officer Stacy Max. Even the principal with interest, maybe more than 1,000. When I got into college, I tried to send money to Stacy Max, but every time the registered letter was returned, it was returned untouched. And when I called again and went to the police station to find Stacy Max, I learned that Stacy Max had been transferred. I lost contact with Stacy Max for a long time. I used to think that I would never see Stacy Max again. Such a good Stacy Max. I lost contact with him like this, and I feel sad to think about it, but I never thought that I would see him on this occasion. He didn't seem to remember me anymore, and didn't recognize me. And when he saw me looking at him, he nodded at me in a friendly way. I could see in his eyes that it was the way he looked at strangers. I was a little lost, stepped on a wrong step, and was gently pinched by the captain before I suddenly came back to my senses and continued to concentrate on dancing. After the ceremony, I looked for Stacy Max in the crowd. He was already extremely tall, dressed in black, and his back was particularly eye-catching, and I rushed up to him and stood in front of him. For a while, he didn't recognize me, or maybe he thought I was a little familiar, but he couldn't believe it. After all, I wore heavy makeup today, and the scar on the left side of my face was completely covered. I didn't know what to do to say the first thing to him. Just then, a girl walked up and shouted, "Brother, do you know Nicole Hurst?" When Stacy Max heard my name, a smile slowly broke into his eyes. Those doubts that he couldn't understand just now have answers because of this name. He smiled at me, his snow-white teeth bared. "Yes, Nicole Hurst." The girl's smile was 3 similarities to Stacy Max, and she joked with a smile, "That's good, brother. I thought you were a woman insulator, and you were blind to your good looks." The girl looked sideways at me and introduced herself. "Hey, Nicole Hurst. I'm your classmate. I've admired the name for a long time. Since you know each other, I'll go first." I watched the girl walk away and heard Stacy Max whisper in my ear, "It's my half-sister. We only met a few years ago." I looked up to Stacy Max in the eye, thoughtfully. His eyes lit up. He looked at my face and said, "You haven't changed at all. You're still the same as before." I sneered, thinking that Stacy Max wouldn't even boast. "I have changed so much. How can it be the same as before?" I walked ahead alone, trying to buy him a drink, and he chased after me, a little nervously. When I handed him the milk tea, I deliberately frowned. Someone didn't even recognize who I was just now, so they were embarrassed to say that I was the same as before. Stacy Max drank my milk tea and said, "That's because it's prettier than before, so I don't recognize it." I smoked milk tea, and I couldn't hide my smile. I don't know if Stacy Max noticed anything unusual about me that day, but I laughed all the way from the bubble tea shop to the dormitory. It was the happiest day I had ever been in college, and the happiest day of my life. I will never forget the day I felt when I met the handsome Stacy Max at school again, which was a throbbing and surging feeling that I had never had in my life and would never have ever felt to anyone else. After graduating from university, I came to Baikeng, and as agreed, 4 years ago, I worked in finance for a listed electrical company. Cornelia Liu is very much in love with me, and I am grateful to her. We have had a great time working together, and I know that without her, I wouldn't be where I am today. So, I worked hard for her. At the same time, I also actively call on my younger students to come and work in this humane company. I have a large number of excellent talents for the development and growth of the company. Cornelia Liu likes to take me everywhere she goes, and she often tells me that the best decision I've ever made in my life was the one that funded me 4 years ago. Stacy Max and I were in a relationship very quickly, and now we are preparing to get married. He sometimes got off work late, and my favorite thing to do was sit in a bookstore across the street from their police station and wait for him. The owner of the bookstore also sells coffee, and every afternoon, if I have an early day from work, I order a cup of coffee here and sit in front of the floor-to-ceiling window looking at the police station opposite. On this day, I saw Stacy Max come back from outside. A small black stray cat shuttled around at the door of the police station. All the policemen walked into the bureau. Only he squatted down, patted the little wild cat's head, gave it a little water to drink. The little wild cat relied on him not to leave. He picked up the little wild cat to tease it, raised it high, and laughed heartily. I looked at him through the glass window, and I knew he was the best place for me to live my life. I love him. I love his kindness the most, and I love him for his selfless help when I fell into the endless abyss. Since then, I have looked back countless times, and I will sigh, the so-called bottomless abyss. Going down is also a long future. The future is unpredictable, but I know that with good intentions, I can bounce back even if I hit the bottom. I am grateful to those who helped me in times of desperation, and I will continue to help others selflessly. The end.